reading. We are bringing you the best in flash fiction readings from all over the world. My name is Francine Witte, and I'm here in New York City. And today we have three wonderful readers. We have Faulkner, Sarah Freiigh, and Scott Garson. But before we get to them, I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to introduce you to my co-host, Meg Pokrass, who's over in the UK. Meg has a very special guest for us. Meg, take it away.
Hi, thanks, Francine. Today we have a special guest, Nancy Freund, who won our contest last time, and she's going to be reading her winning story for us today. So it's great to be here with everybody. And take it away, Nancy.
Thank you. All right. Damn, he says, with 48 A's. His foot is mile a minute bouncing next to me, nearly touching. No mind paid to social distancing currently encouraged. That damn, gritty and impressed. Fake impressed, I think. But who am I to say? It could be real. It's his response to the gal across from him in her UCSB hoodie when he asked, "You a student?" And she said two separate syllables. Yeah. Damn. His tweaker knee, his jitter foot. Look at you, college girl. I glance and back, quick flash to my book. Glasses, ratty hair, sweet, tiny smile. She's not often looked at ever. Her giggle makes me nervous too. His chair and mine are toe leaks, 1930s, chic, industrial, ubiquitous, and white. They're on design sites everywhere, and I can even get them wholesale priced. No one else in this jam-packed place will even know what they are. Instead, they have beer and hip-hop stickers on their laptop lids, 5-petal marijuana leaves. My face is a mask of nonchalance. The guy's bouncing in shiny fabric basketball shorts below his knees. There's not a single open toe leaks, or I'd move. But I tell myself it's fine. The metal may demagnetize and calm him. Well, grad school, she says. Her laptop's open now. No stickers, just the apple. Damn, he roars again, grabs the slab. He's bouncing. So you're already in it. She smiles 1,000 watts across the polished lumber. It lights him up, and they're both giggling now. Hers is girly. In his, I hear lechery, transgression. His knee, long socks and Converse, Raiders. I may be required for intervention, Mama Bear. Suddenly, there are no more words or sounds between them. I can feel the absence, the sudden slice of silence in her like an ache. Sorry, sweetie, I should say. My apologies. Her friend, another girl with glasses, comes with her coffee cup and sits at the open end. She sees the bouncer, sparkles her attention at him, lit by rivalry. He knows not to give up on the first. We're all bouncing now, like 6 of us, buoyed by his energy. My cup has my name in Sharpie marker, but the first girly girl's does not, and whatever's going on here, I'm relieved. Damn, he tries again, as if it's fresh, but she's hard at work at last, reading her computer. His phone goes, and he says, "Yeah, you got the part?" "Nah, I'm at Lighthouse. You want something?" He stands to leave. 2 guys on my end of the slab glance up and glance away. There's no one else who wears his hair like he does or has his walk. There's a contagious awareness of his departure. Everybody watches without looking. He tosses his cup into recycling, the bin I'd also choose, 68% certain that it's right. The lid says it's compostable. From the parking lot, a yoga mom and her little boy are approaching hand in hand, and the child stares up at the guy as they cross paths. He notices and dips a shoulder, lowers that half of himself as he moves toward his car. His arm elongates, hand descends, and he holds out his upturned palm. The kid slaps him a high five. Smile on the kiddo coming in, and his muscled mother, too. I'm glad the girl in glasses was facing me and didn't see.
Well, damn, that was good. That was great, Nancy. Well, you knew that was coming, but it was really wonderful. Great use of the prompt, which was to take elements of the pandemic, ideas from the pandemic, but not exactly, so you did that really well. So thank you very much, Nancy.
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Thanks.
So now you may be wondering how you can be the next contest winner, Flash Fiction guest on Flash Fiction Z. Well, we're going to tell you after the reading, so stay tuned. But right now, we have our featured readers, and the first up is Grant Faulkner. Grant Faulkner is the executive director of National Novel Writing Month, which is NaNoWriMo, and the co-founder of 100 Word Story. He has published 2 books on writing, Pep Talk for Writers, 52 Insights and Actions to Boost Your Creative Mojo, and Brave the Page, a teen writing guide. He's also published a collection of 100 Word Stories, Fissures, and Nothing Short of 100, selected tales from 100 Word Story. His stories have appeared in dozens of literary magazines, including Tin House, the Southwest Review, and the Gettysburg Review, and he has been anthologized in collections such as Norton's New Micro, exceptionally short fiction, and Best Small Fictions. His essays on creativity have been published in the New York Times, Poets and Writers, Writer's Digest, and The Writer. He's also co-host of the podcast Right Minded. Ladies and gentlemen, Grant Faulkner.
Thanks so much, Francine, and thanks to all my fellow readers. This is so fun. Thanks to Meg, who's often in England. It's probably, what, midnight there or something?
Not quite.
I think Meg's on. Not quite. Okay. Meg's still with us, awake and alert. Yeah, I thought I'd kick off my reading with, instead of reading fiction, which I plan to, I'm going to read a few of my little 100-word stories from Fissures. But I wanted to read a little essay I wrote that's part of a book called The Art of Brevity that I'm writing right now. And it's essentially an essay exploring metaphors for flash fiction. And the reason I am pursuing this as a writer is I write, I think, according to shapes. It's like I view writing more as like shapes and sounds or that informs the text on the page. And I think that applies a lot to Flash. And I read an essay by Leah Purpura years ago where she came up with all these fantastic metaphors, and it really, influenced my writing. So here goes. And I'm going to ask, and my fellow readers are going to their metaphors to the mix. They're going to come up with one of their own or pick one out from what I read here. So we'll have a little discussion. So metaphors for flash fiction. Flash fiction is the name given to short stories. Flash stories are typically defined as being a story that is less than 1,000 words, but it's a shame that flash is defined as a word count. I view it as less about length than it is about an aesthetic. I was once asked by an interviewer, happened to be Meg Pokrass, who was the interviewer, if flash fiction were an animal, which animal it would be. I considered a chicken because you can peck at the stories, perhaps a badger because shorts sometimes have to be more tenacious than their larger brethren. I thought a fish was apt because tiny stories often swim together. I almost decided upon a cat because a cat can fit perfectly in your lap, and even as you pet it and listen to its purrs, it stares at you with a mysterious menace. In the end, I decided upon a coyote that strangely appears in your backyard and stares into your kitchen window. You lock eyes and the world is suddenly a little dangerous, a little less predictable. Something wild has briefly entered the safety of your domestic space and changed it forever with its feral threat. But perhaps my favorite metaphor for flash stories comes from Molly Giles. They are fireflies flickering in the darkness of a summer night. The definition of numinous, otherworldly beauty, ephemeral and captivating at once. Of all the forms of fiction, flash fiction is the only one described with a metaphor. As James Thomas, the editor of several seminal anthologies of flash fiction, tells the story, he was talking with his wife about what to call these short stories of under 1,000 words. He'd been calling them blasters. Thank God we don't call them blasters, right? But that moniker didn't ring with any poetic allure. Right at that moment, a bolt of lightning struck, and the dark night lit up with a flash. Call them flash, his wife said, and the name of a genre was born. The irony is that flash, despite being the smallest of fictional forms, breeds subgenres in an ever-flowing list of new names. Flash stories are often called miniatures, shorts, or postcard stories, another metaphor. There's the drabble stories that are exactly 100 words, microfiction, stories under 400 words, and hint fiction, stories under 25 words. The great writer Yasunari Kawabata described his shorts as palm of the hand stories, another metaphor, because they were so small they could fit in the palm of your hand. Others call them smoke longs because they last as long as it takes to smoke a cigarette. All of these different names, these forms nested within one another like a series of Russian dolls, supports a theory of mine. Constraints don't limit creativity, they spark new layers of creativity, each layer subtly different, nuanced, unique. I think that one can best write a story with a metaphor of its shape and essence in mind, whether you're writing a story that is a tangled web or an airy breath. So here are 13 metaphors of flash form in similar ways as that lightning bolt ago. Flash fiction is like the spontaneous vision of an atom. When the nucleus splits in two, the drama begins. Flash fiction is like a tiny island created from an unknown eruption at the Earth's crust, enhanced by the expanse of the sea around it. 3. Flash fiction is like the moment a turtle pokes its head out of its shell. 4. Flash fiction is like an afternoon nap, short, dreamy, a respite from a tough day, a strange and intriguing interlude, and when you wake up, you're in a different state. 5. Flash fiction is the moment you hit the brakes. 6. Flash fiction is like a brook flowing through the woods. It's easy to step over, and it's not big enough to be on any map, but then when you pause to observe it, you see the life teeming within it. 7. Flash fiction is like the tip of a needle that pokes you. 8. Flash fiction is like a rare seashell you find on the beach. It's delicate, yet it's traveled through many waters, only to be mysteriously left on the shore. 9. Flash fiction is like the faint rustling of a ghost, present yet absent, alive yet dead. It has something to tell you, but you have to listen in a different way. 10. Flash fiction is like a submarine, unable to go to a place beneath the surface of life in a way that other boats can't. 11. Flash fiction is like a candle swaying to an invisible breeze in a sea of darkness. 12. Flash fiction is like a pill, small and seemingly harmless, yet full of powerful substances that might heal, might kill, or might alter your senses. And 13. Flash fiction is like the light of a sparkler, spritzing light into the air for only a minute. I'm just going to read some of the ones that Leah Purpura said as well, just a quote from her just to conclude things. She says, miniatures transcend their size like small but vicious dogs, dense chunks of fudge, espresso, a drop of mercury, a parasite. Miniatures do nothing less than alter our sense of and relation to space and time. Finally, and most strangely to me, miniatures are radically self-sufficient. The beings who inhabit fairylands, those elves and sprites, pixies and trolls, don't usually strive to be our pals. They're distant and go about their business. They don't need us. Their smallness is our problem, or intrigue, or desire. They don't need us, and thus we are drawn to them, as any smitten lover might be, to a beloved who remains so close, and yet just out of reach. So, that's it. A lot of metaphors there. It was probably too long for an essay on brevity, but I'm curious if any readers have a metaphor to add or discuss what resonated or what metaphors guide you.
I always go with the poets and steal a paraphrase line from Borges, which is a flash like a poem is a thing made of algebra and fire.
Ooh, I love that.
No,
that is perfect.
No
worries. Go ahead.
So I just think it's a really interesting essay. I've thought about this issue some, precisely because I'm not crazy about Flash as a name for this. I think if it's a guiding metaphor for what people are doing in this form, it may be the wrong one. It may suggest to people that like just a little, any moment is like good enough and can be a story. And I don't think that's really what stories are. So the one that I really responded to out of the ones that you offer in your piece is the one where, what is it that's left on the beach after a lifetime in the ocean? Was it a shell?
A seashell. Yeah.
I really like that because it's particular, and it is necessarily kind of tight frame, right? But there's something larger, much larger often that it's connected to.
Cool. Thank you so much. I too have never been comfortable with Flash. That's the name for the genre. Just to record my vote. Anybody else? No? I think we. Nancy, you're muted, I think.
I unmuted myself. I will add. I absolutely would echo what Scott said about the seashell on the beach. And I was thinking about sea glass, which I've been writing about all day, as a comparable. But as you were talking about it, I think I've actually got something about froth happening that's going a little bit different direction. You know the sound when you open a can of beer? So that little flash sound, that little crack, to me is the story. And if you're going to drink the whole beer or just one sip of the beer, that's what lasts. It's how long you choose to enjoy the thing. It's going to stay with you. And I think that's the idea, is that something's maybe rolled around in the ocean for a long time and been molded into something, but it's also going to stick with you for a good long time too, if it's good flash.
I love this. All three of these are going in the essay, as if the essay needs any more metaphors. But I feel like Flash is many things, and we can't. One metaphor doesn't suffice, right? So Thank you so much. That was great. All three of them were wonderful. Well, I'm going to read just a few or 5 pieces. They're pretty short. They're all 100 words. They're from my book Fissures. I got addicted to writing. The warning is if you write 100-word stories, they're addictive. I dropped everything I was writing for a long time just to write 100-word stories, and then started a 100-word story journal, and then wrote this book sometime in there too. So first one is called Shirley Temple. And I read a quote that the guy who developed Mad Men, Matt Weiner, he developed it as if he was looking through a keyhole and spying on his parents. So that was the inspiration for Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple. I sat at the bar, my feet swinging from a stool. Jacksonville, 1972. The adults crowded into a circular booth in the corner. Men pinched women. Women squirmed in squirmy dresses. I smelled the chlorine on my hands as I listened to the cackles of laughter. My father told me I could have as many Shirley Temples as I wanted, but I drank slowly, counting to 50 before taking a single bird-like sip. The cherry bobbed slowly lower in the glass, almost dissolving like candy. I wouldn't eat it until it rested on the bottom. It's good to have rules. And then this next one, also with a little sin in it, called Skins. If only we could go out back, like when we were kids, and smoke and fool around. Our parents at parties, ashtrays filling up with butts, rumblings of laughter. There was always the question why they wanted us to grow up to be like them. They didn't imagine we'd mingle with evil. They didn't anticipate inclinations toward torpor. We thought the husbands loved the wives and vice versa, boxer shorts and JCPenney bras. But we knew better, mosquitoes biting our tender skin. We knew it's best to stay out of the way, even if there is no way back. And then this next one's called The Toad. And the only thing I can tell about it is I woke up one morning at 5 a.m. I wanted to write, didn't know what to write about, and there was a poem about a toad in the New Yorker. And I remembered all of the frogs and toads of my youth who were like pancaked on the cement during the middle of the summer. So they're not there anymore because they're basically extinct in the Midwest. Toad, flattened by a car, its arms spread out a little like Jesus. The sun had baked it as crisp as a potato chip. Poor Toad, Maria said, didn't know how to cross the road. Maybe he thought the car was a new friend, I said, rushing to greet him. Or he was puzzling how such a small thing at a distance could become so large, she said. We spent hours in such conversations. It was nice how we never talked about what was next, who we were together. As if the toad wasn't part of every story in its way, even ours. This next one's called Waystation. In Porto Umbria, Maeve rented a room from a whorish-looking landlady. There was no door, only a wispy pink curtain. Her giggling brood of daughters kept slinking in to watch her dress and brush her teeth. There was little else to do than drink each night. A feline-looking boy in front of the cantina put his arm around Maeve and said, "Come in and have a drink," letting his hand slip down to her ass. Vultures ate a dead pig in the muddy street. She found comfort in the pink lamp's dirty tassels. Sometimes any kind of touch felt good. And I'm going to close with death. Story about death. Seems to be kind of out there in the world these days, various forms. Oops, I got the wrong story here. Here we go. This one's called Morphine Drip. "It's what we remember," Dad said, as if clinging to a frayed thread tossed to a man overboard in a storm. He said something about a boy named Jim, his pants down to his ankles, his tuxedo shirt unbuttoned. Long baby hairs on smooth cheeks, frogs croaking in the woods, jinrikis under an August moon, the violet night. Outside a few parked cars, inside the ruckus of others. "Never underestimate the comfort sin can provide," he said. "A lifetime of bedtime stories, all to your lonesome." Skin crinkled around his eyes, his dry lips pressed feebly around a straw. That's it.
Thank you so much, Grant. That was absolutely amazing. What a treat that was for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Sarah Freighh. Sarah Freighh is the author of Sad Math, winner of the 2014 Moon City Press Poetry Prize and the 2015 Whirling Prize from the University of Indianapolis, A Brief Natural History of an American Girl, Accents Publishing 2012, and Sort of Gone, Turning Point Books 2008. Recent work has appeared in the Cincinnati Review, Smoke Long Quarterly, D'Ode, and in the anthologies New Microfiction and Best Microfiction 2019 and 2020. Among her awards are a 2009 Poetry Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts and a grant from the Constance Saltonstall Foundation in 2006. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for hosting me. I appreciate it very much. Can you hear me? Everything?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hello, England. Thank you. I'm just going to read a few pieces and not too much talk between them. So here goes. This one is called Last Christmas. I think it appeared in the Jellyfish Review. Anyways, last Christmas, we talked often about what to give someone who is dying. Nothing, everything, a little something. My sister and I went to Walmart on a Sunday in December. It was crowded. Spit-polished people wearing church clothes, frat guys in pajama pants, swigging Red Bulls, everyone wandering aimless through the aisles, faces bathed sick by yellow fluorescence. Speakers bleated out Christmas music, interrupted by announcements for lost kids. When we got lost in electronics in the middle of a football game, a dozen running backs came for us. We found a set of dishes, white and light and dishwashable, something Dad could handle. A mom smacked her kid for yanking down a stack of blankets. The air smelled of something sweet and on fire. Outside, a man shook a bell over a red kettle. The snow had picked up, filling in footprints. We had to blaze our own trail. It occurred to me that this is, this is so prehistoric sounding now because this is when everybody was in a store all together, which is not happening anymore. This is a kind of magic, and I actually started this story in a workshop that I took with Meg in August of 2014, which was, I met Paul Beckman during that workshop and Meg, and we had so much fun. We were writing like every hour, it seemed like. It was just nuts. I was like, oh, I'm on fire. And it was basically when I started sort of writing, I transitioned from, I'd been writing poetry for a long time, and started writing micros. And it's kind of a, micro is, such a perfect collision between fiction and poetry, with the condensation of poetry with the narrative urge of fiction. It was so much fun for me to be let out of the line box, what, I don't have to lineate something. So anyways, this is the oldest one I'm gonna read, I think. So it's called A Kind of Magic. He tells me that his mother carries a lock of his dead father's hair coiled inside the folded bills of her wallet. How she'll forget about it altogether and have to pluck it embarrassed from the spill of dimes and nickels on the checkout counter at the grocery store. Sometimes she'll tell the startled cashier that it's her hair from when she was a natural blonde, when her hair hung thick and straight to the ass of her tie-dyed miniskirt, when she went by the name of Star Astor and danced naked in the rain at Woodstock, way before she was somebody's mother, or the widow of a man who left her with nothing but a shoebox full of unpaid bills and 3 photographs from their honeymoon in Vegas, their faces smudged gray with fatigue after a night at the craps table where they wagered everything but their round-trip Greyhound tickets from Ann Arbor. Back when his blonde hair hid his eyes, curtained his face as he kissed the dice. Back when she would bet anything was possible, when she still believed love was a kind of magic. This is Anybody, and I think this was in last year's 2019 Best Micro. Thank you very much. So anybody, 2 words. Down under was your stomach, hollowed out and shouting. What it said, you didn't listen. You counted ribs, a xylophone of bones that lullabied you into sleep. You heard beautiful. From the 6-ounce glass of tomato juice that stunned your tongue, from the fork you stabbed into lettuce leaves in the cube of cheddar cheese that fueled your 6-mile run along country roads. Whole rows of corn bowed down and whispered, beautiful. The east-west swish of cars on Interstate 70, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Your world simpled into an equation of yes or no, no to the smear of chocolate frosting on cellophane, to chicken thighs frying, to glistening coins of pepperoni on a discarded slice. A storm of no, so much thunder and lightning, but yes to your hip bone sharpening the pockets of your size 5 Levi's, to the bathroom tiles cool white against your cheek. Yes to water when you withered and curled. Nights you bloomed under black lights, danced with your dwindling shadow. When the fat lady cut in, you knew to excuse yourself before she could crawl inside and live in you. In the bathroom, you leaned against the sink and whispered yes. Afterward, you were clean again, hollowed out and shouting. The next couple ones I'm going to read are in first person plural. We, which is interesting point of view, the collective point of view, which is quite different from anything else. So I've been having fun playing with it. Anyways, this is We Dive, which was in this year's Best Micro. Thank you again. We dive. Age 12, we dive and dive. For the girl playing dead by the drain in the deep end of the pool. For the pennies we toss in the water by the lifeguard's chair. From the diving board, 3 steps, the hurdle, the launch. We come up for air long enough to eat lunch, cheeseburgers and fries drowned in a murder of ketchup. Our bellies humped and rounded, push against the elastic of our bathing suits as we dive and dive and dive. At 14, we lie in the gutters of the swimming pool, basting our bellies in baby oil and the occasional wavelets of cool that slop up whenever a boy dives in. We pick at burgers without buns, drink cans of Tab poured warm over ice that cracks like knuckles. We learn about calories and fat from the high school girls who shout warnings across the humid locker room. Sometimes we dive, but only at the end of the day. At 18, we arrange chaise lounges and serve up the buffet of ourselves, tasty swell of breasts, toasted brown, a feast for our boyfriends teeing off on the first hole. Later, we pull out hand mirrors and paint alien faces over our own eyes and lips, wait by the 18th green while they putt out. We prop our feet on the dashboard of their cars, let them drive us to a rutted field off a dirt road where we unzip them and dive as if we are starving. We hold our breath, but we're already smothered, already drowned. This is We Smoke, which was in my book, Sad Math, also in New Micro, yeah. Okay, we smoke. We smoke because the nuns say we shouldn't. He-Man Marlboros, or Salem, slender and meadow fresh, over cups of thin coffee at the Bridge Diner. We fill an ashtray in an hour easy, while Ruby, the waitress, marries ketchups and tells us horror stories about how her first labor went on for 52 hours until her boy was yanked out of her butt first. And now she has this theory that kids who come out like that got their brains in their asses from day one. She says we're smart to give our babies away to some Barbie and Ken couple with a house and a yard with real grass and a swing set, and we nod like we agree with her and smoke some more. Nights we huddle up under the bathroom window in the Mercy Home for Unwed Mothers and blow smoke at the stained sky while we swap stories about our babies doing handstands on our bladders, playing volleyball with our hearts, how our sons will be presidents or astronauts, and our daughters will be beautiful and chaste, and because we know our babies are not ours at all. We talk about everything and nothing while we watch a moth bang against the light and smoke some more. And I'll finish with what we remember. This is a fairly new one, what we remember. The holy roller girl who writhed with the fever of Jesus on Sunday while her pastor daddy twirled snakes like lariats over the heads of sinners crying to be cleansed, who bust in from out county on Monday undressed for gym in a mop closet, who stuffed a transistor radio down her pants while her pastor daddy handed out salvation in front of Sears, who believed she'd ascended to heaven whenever Diana Ross sang in her ears, all gauze and sequins, whenever Smokey baby babied her down rows of corn while she danced with her tall green partners, the nights her father came to sanctify her, the day she collapsed in gym class and sang to Jesus in her gospel tongue, an arpeggio of gibberish, all amen and hell yes, how she came back to us a ghost girl, rinsed of all but the high heart notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Freigh. That was beautiful. And I'm trying to be the impartial host here, but I have to say my head is exploding with damn and flattened toads and xylophone of bones. I mean, how do you keep it all in there? So beautiful, beautiful reading so far, everybody. And now our final reader is Scott Garson. And Scott Garson's book of stories, Is That You, John Wayne, was taken up for promotion on bnm.com in conjunction with the Discover New Writers program. He has worked in or coming from American Short Fiction, Three Penny Review, Blue Stem, Conjunctions, Kenyon Review, and others. He lives in Missouri and edits Wigleaf. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Garson.
Thank you so much, Francine. It's just great to be here, reading with Nancy and Sarah and Grant, meeting sort of close to IRL for the first time, Meg and Francine. Very happy to be here. I'm gonna read for starters these super short stories. In a way, this is a good pairing with Grant's reading earlier. These are stories that I've written on my phone, all of them. There have come to be rules about them, like they can't be any more than 200 words. But for starters, I just kind of keep them to a phone screen. I started writing them when I wasn't home, so I didn't really have any other like technology for writing except for paper, and that's like, you know, I don't do that anymore. So that's why I started doing these, just because phone was sort of all I had. But then I kind of got into doing these. I've grouped them in series of 9, and at this point there are 9 series of them. And what I'm gonna do is read one from every series, which actually will go a little bit faster than you think for reasons that I'll explain. The first one I'm gonna read is the first one of these I actually wrote, and it's called Face. I want to thank Kelly Luce at Electric Literature for publishing this one in a set of 9. It was actually the second set to come out, but probably got more wider exposure than the first set, and so it was a wonderful place for these to be, you know, introduced more widely. So this one's called Face. A man in an empty parking lot took pictures of our train as it passed. He made use of a tripod. Its shadow and his were a vanishing math on the pavement below. For a second, I might have known anything at all about what it was like to live in his life. Then it was not that way. I saw vertical brick. I saw letters of words. So that's the only one you get to hear from the first set. Set 2 actually got scrapped. What happened with these? What happens with these is they either kind of find a center, like somewhat thematically as a set, or they don't and fall apart. So that's what happened with number 2. It fell apart and got kind of cannibalized and redistributed into other sets. So I moved to set 3. In this one, I was playing around a lot with genre, among other things. In this one, this story is called Investigation. I traced the kid to the city, but couldn't find her. Next day, she was blue in the morgue. Fentanyl. Why I really, really don't like missing persons work. A week later, one of my contacts asked if the kid was still on my list and passed me an address. She'd rented a room in a house, small room, no one there knew her. The single bed was loosely made and clothes were stacked up in a suitcase. A ticket stub from a concert was pinned to a bulletin board on the wall up in the corner. That detail stuck with me. It was like she'd been taking care to save space for other pinnable items. All right. So it's a work in progress now, these things. At first I was calling it phone because I wrote them all on my phone before moving them onto the computer. But now kind of getting back to the question that Grant led with, metaphors and such, I'm going with stories. The work in progress is titled Stories of No Real Use. And I'm really trying to think about them, even though they're very short, as stories, and in a way kind of ask in the writing, what is the essence of a story? And I've had a lot of fun with that question. This one is called High. It's from the 4th set, which was the first set to appear. Eric Newman and Genevieve, I'm not sure how she says it, Kirsten, published this in OK Donkey. And this was a great place to have a first set of these come out because they got a real positive response. So, High. Hunger must have looked good on me. I was hired at a very decent rate by a man whose apparent shtick was to be outrageous and hire skinny young guys off the street. They measured me, had me in clothes at a table with all sorts of food and drink that no one could actually touch. We were supposed to be laughing. Me and this white guy and 2 women, one black, one Latinx. We were supposed to be charmed like nightclub royalty, having the time of our lives. When they had enough pictures, they took back the clothes. They gave me a voucher. They opened a door. I didn't know if I should say anything. I just left. I kind of stumbled moving into the afternoon glare. So, set 5. Set 5 is one of my favorites because some longer ones ended up in there. I mentioned that the rule is that they can't go over 200 words. In this set, I ended up having to kind of edit down pieces to get it to that max. And I like some of these longer ones quite a bit. So I'm going to read one of those. It's called Today. And I think, like, if you word counted it, it's 200 words because I needed like every one I could get. Today. Her friend, when he was her friend, used to say you'd live differently if you lived like this was the second to last day of your life. Why second to last? She wanted to know. Because last, he explained, would be difficult. Last, you'd always be asking yourself, now, when? And this had made sense. They'd agreed, as a kind of sort of joke, to text each other sometimes. Today is the second to last day of your life. Nothing further, just those words. Then they lost touch. She'd dated a friend of his. He hadn't taken it well. And then, years later, he texted her. Today is the second to last day of your life. That sentence out of the blue. At first, she was angry. She couldn't believe he couldn't see that he didn't have the right to just come in with those words anymore. She wondered about him. She wondered if maybe he had become desperate in some way. It wouldn't surprise her. She came to realize that. She didn't respond to his text. Even so, the line connecting him to her seemed realer for a while, and she felt like she could wish him honest luck in his project of living. Okay. So this is from set 6. I think this one's currently at the New Yorker, where they're sure to accept and publish it any minute. So this piece is called Car. I like your car, I said. The man said, trade ya. We exchanged keys. Watching him pull the Escalade into the street, my son looked nervous. How about this, I said, when we had dropped into the seats of the curved convertible. It seemed like a car that could take me into the future from out of the past, that could harness propulsion. However, it was out of gas. During my wait for a turn at the pump, I guess I fell asleep. I dreamed about high school, a different high school though, one whose fading sepia halls were so dark I could hardly see. I was lost in this maze, unable to find my way. I heard a voice calling, Dad? Phone cracks me up. This then, moving along, 7th set of these. This is the first one from that set, story called Zombie. Starts in a way he couldn't have seen, not even if he had been looking. Starts with a mood, blue mood, weak and forlorn, failure of something inside him. Shortage of whatever store it is that guides him through his day. He hides in his office. The words on his monitor won't hold still. They slip and resume their place and slip like the beat of a heart. Nothing holds still in his vision, in fact. What he sees, it is somehow approximate. What he hears, the voices of colleagues, whirled and garish. Perhaps he needs sleep. This is what he is telling himself at this point, that he has a choice in the matter, a power to blink, to gather himself, shake himself, wake himself up. We're going right through these sets, just speeding through these sets of stories. Set number 8. Now, I thought about this for a long time. I'm not going to read one from set number 8, not because it doesn't exist like set number 2, but because this is one that's coming out in Blue Stem. And I did a reading earlier this spring for MU, that's where I work, University of Missouri, their quarantine reading series. And I read one of these stories that's coming out at Blue Stem. And of course, it was one of my favorite ones, probably also one of the best ones. And I thought if I do another one from set 8, it's probably also going to be another of my favorite ones, probably the best ones, and I'll be kind of stealing the thunder of this set that's due to appear in Blue Stem. And this is a mag that Bess Winter and Woody Skinner are reviving, where they work at Eastern Illinois University. And so I want to kind of not steal the thunder of that piece and hope that people get drawn to that site when these are published. So I'm going to skip set number 8 and instead read 2 from the most recent set, which is set 9. And this one, these were written just like within the last 10 days. I gave myself as a present for making it through the semester a writing session where I did 9 more of these. So these 2 are brand new and they could be a little less polished than the ones you've just heard. The first is Act 2. The problem with reincarnation as an ideal, metaphysics aside, seemed totally obvious. He didn't know why people hadn't been pointing it out. If you're reborn in a different body, a whole different system of organs and nerves, you are not you. The goop of your brain will be new and unschooled, like back to square one. A second chance, but without experience, without hindsight. You'll do it all over again. Not know what to say or not say, do or not do in her Buick sedan at the edge of the field they were using for parking. You will be fucked again, amazed again that people were made to be hurt like this. And then the very last one, which is also the last one in the set, is called Trip. The cat was a terrible person and refused to sit with her or even be held, except for when she returned from her run and he pushed to her shins, wanting to leave, to go, be where she'd been. And she grabbed him and shouldered the broken screen door and stood with him there on the step for 2 or 3 minutes, carefully loving him and feeling the world as he did. The movements of birds, their voices shaping the sky, and a car displacing air on a ridge at a distance that became real to her and magnificent, just for right then, just with that small little being in her arms. All right. So those are my stories of no real use. How am I doing time-wise? Because I have some choices to make now, and I wasn't pro enough and didn't plan this out well in advance. So time-wise,
You're okay. Yeah.
like what do I got?
So 3 more minutes or?
Okay. So I'm going to do something kind of unconventional and close with a story that's not mine. I'm going to switch hats here. Wigleaf editor me now. Some of you guys have been in Wigleaf, or in Sarah's case, forthcoming in Wigleaf. We published a story just recently before the top 50 break by a writer who is new and unknown. This is a writer, she hasn't published much at all, but she's in the MFA program at Johns Hopkins. Her name is Maya Chesley, and the story is We Don't Live There Anymore. So I'm going to read you this story from Wigleaf. It's short and it's great and wonderful. It was one of the few stories that got from our board a unanimous vote. The staff was super into this story. So Maya Chesley's We Don't Live There Anymore. You could be something if you tried, anything. You could be a horse, my father says, and even though I'm not so young anymore, I believe him. I do a 5-mile run on all fours and bruise my hands. I eat from a trough. I pretend I am large and could trample someone. My father and I have always been playing this game. Neither of us can win. The game goes like this. My father lies, and I agree. When I was 5, he used to say, "You were born Irish, all ginger hair and freckles. You had a penchant for corned beef." Even though I have always been so black, my skin looks purple. When I started high school, it became, I saw a Bigfoot once eating at a truck stop in Chicago. His favorite one, which he has been repeating to me ever since we became a family of 2, "Your mother was a great woman." I always knew he was lying, but I always believed him because it was easier and I was exhausted. So I would say, looking into the bathroom mirror, "I think I see a freckle." And I would say it in Gaelic, and my father would smile all crinkly, like he was a balloon that had lost its air a long time ago. Maybe I'm playing the game with you now. I've already lied once. I didn't believe my father when he said I was a horse. Not all the way. I wanted to. but I had grown enough to also want different things, to speak without a brogue, for example. Actually, I lied twice. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm more like my father than I think. The way to win this game is to not play it. I have always known this. I have always known that Bigfoot is really just a large, confused man running through the woods outside Chicago. That a black woman with green eyes and red hair is just a black woman with green eyes and red hair, and she is always walking away from you. When my father says, "You could be a horse," he is in the hospital. It happens a few days after he turns 62. The years of lifting post office boxes, of sucking on Marlboros, of waiting for a woman so pale and red-boned you might mistake her for Irish to reappear like Bigfoot at a truck stop, these years have carved him out. Days pass. I don't go back to show my father the bruises I pressed into my palm when I trotted on all fours. I want to, but I don't. Instead, I bandage up my hands and send Papa a post office box with yellowing family photos, photos of just him and me. Here, the one of him scraping my wiry Brillo pad hair into 2 puffy braids. There, our first trip to Chicago. We are eating buttermilk pancakes at a diner and not talking about Bigfoot. We are not talking at all. By Maya Chesley. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much, Scott and Sarah and Grant and Nancy. This has just been an incredible night. Thank you all so much for being here. Before we go, I'm going to end with a prompt for next time. So our prompt this time is to write a story in which an animal or insect enters the story and changes the way a character sees their situation. So back to you, Francine.
Okay, well, thank you, Meg. And as as Meg mentioned, our Facebook page is where you can find out all the guidelines for the story in case you want to know word count, where to submit, and that's the place to find information about anything or upcoming readings. Who's going to be reading in the future? So that's Flash Fiction Z. And I want to thank my co-host, Meg Pokrass, our contest winner, Nancy Friend, as well as our amazing featured readers, Grant Faulkner, Sarah Freiigh, and Scott Garson. And we will invite our readers today to post about how to buy their books on Flash Fiction Z. And I know I'm going to buy their books. But most of all, we'd like to thank you, our viewers, and we look forward to seeing you all next month for more in the best of Flash Fiction readings. Thank you from Flash Fiction Z. Night.
Bye.